Imagine you have an initial call for your dream job at Google or Microsoft, or maybe it's a tech job at Wall Street with Citibank or Bank of America. The HR person asks you, how large is your current company? What size companies have you worked for? And you're thinking, what does this have to do with technology? Then they ask about your experience, but specifically enterprise experience. Enterprise experience? I have experience. Is that the same thing? What's the difference between enterprise experience and experience? Okay, yeah, so this is a larger company than I'm used to, but so what? I've got the skills. So what exactly is this enterprise experience and why is it so important? In this video, I'll break down what enterprise experience really means, and yes, it does matter. Early in my career, this question would frustrate me more than any other. It has a few flavors, but it's the same question. Do you have enterprise experience? Have you ever worked in an enterprise? Enterprise? What is this, Star Trek? Look, I have experience. I'm excited to work for your company. I'm eager to learn. I'm sorry, sir, but we're really looking for someone with enterprise experience. It happened over and over. I was baffled. An enterprise is just a larger company, right? I've worked at companies, maybe not large companies, but why does that matter? I'll tell you why it matters. Working in an enterprise is very different than working in smaller companies. It's one of those things that's difficult to explain, but once you've done it, you'll understand completely. Working in an enterprise can be like working through organized confusion. That doesn't sound so promising, does it? But don't worry, it's not all bad. When you think of large companies, you think of corporate structure. They have standards, policies, practices. They have the latest and greatest tools. They have the budgets to make investments and not cut corners. You think of everyone marching forward toward the same goal smoothly and efficiently. It sounds good on paper, but it's not altogether true. Those are all things that enterprises strive to be. But when you have large labor pools, having everyone move in the same direction can be quite difficult. Oftentimes, those standards and practices turn out to be super cumbersome and inefficient. Let's face it, when you need everyone to move in the same direction, you need to make things as consistent as possible. You need to make people operate in the same fashion. You need to have rigorous controls in place. As a result, things tend to move slower in an enterprise. Innovation tends to be slower in an enterprise. So when they ask if you have enterprise experience, what they're really asking is, can you work within the system or the framework of an enterprise? Have you dealt with enterprise level standards? Have you dealt with their rigid guidelines? Have you had to deal with the bureaucracy? Have you had to chase down managers to get approvals? Have you dealt with the strict change control processes? After all, enterprises have reputations and brand recognition. There's nothing worse than a public outage. And this mentality is felt throughout the organization. The most important thing is to never bring production down. That's the mindset. Production can never go down. That's why there are strict change control processes and procedures. Any change in production must be documented in some fashion. This mindset that production can never go down is what separates enterprise-level engineers from non-enterprise engineers. And no, it doesn't mean that enterprise-level engineers are better. It just means that they've learned to work within the system. Let me give you an example to clear this up. No engineer, enterprise or not, wants production to go down. But the tolerance is much stricter in an enterprise. So let's say there's an issue with a website. Maybe it's a miscalculation in a trading application. That simple issue could result in millions of dollars. What if you saw the issue straight away? Maybe it's a decimal in the wrong place or whatever it is. You know that you could fix the issue in 2 minutes and save the company tons of money. What do? Time is critical. In a smaller company, maybe a manager says, okay, do it, and you're back in business. But an enterprise does not work this way. In an enterprise, no change goes into production without going through a formal change control process. But this is time sensitive. The longer we let it run, the more money we lose. It doesn't matter. No change goes into production without going through change control. Has the solution been tested? Where are the results of the test? We perform those tests locally on our machines. No, we need to see the actual tests in our environment. Does anyone realize that this is time critical? We're losing money as we speak. Yes, we are aware. If we can't get a fix into production by X time, we're making the decision to bring the entire environment down. You're willing to bring down the entire environment for a simple calculation error? Yes. This is a very realistic situation. Face it, in smaller companies, what's the focus? Customers. Your customers and clients are the life's blood of the company, so they take center stage. But when you get to the enterprise level, you have to think about more than the customer. You also have to consider risk. What happens if that simple fix causes other problems? Is there a rollback process? What's the damage to our reputation if we have additional outages? How can we be certain that the solution works? Will this create an audit? If so, do we have the evidence to show auditors? Don't forget that we said that this is a trading app. So will we need to talk to regulators? In light of all this, it seems safer to bring the entire environment down until we have a solid, bulletproof fix. From a customer perspective, they saw one outage that lasted a few hours or whatever. You lessen the risk of your customer losing confidence due to multiple outages. You don't want to create a situation where your client has complete lack of trust. Although the end result is the same, pleasing the customer, the path we took to get here is very different. This example showed the additional level of scrutiny on process and procedures mandated within enterprises, but this level of scrutiny comes with its own hurdles. Enterprises tend to have a lot of different teams, each with their own sets of responsibilities that they must sign off on every time that there's a change. This does slow things down. You can imagine the effect it has on innovation. Things tend to run much slower through an enterprise. You have more hands in the pie, more decision makers, everyone wants to have their say. If you have 10 people constantly disagreeing, you can imagine how difficult it is to implement change. Whereas in a smaller company, you tend to have more freedom to innovate. You tend to have more latitude to do things. You tend to wear more hats and have a wider range of responsibilities. So in that regard, you tend to innovate much faster. But each scenario has its own trade-offs. Smaller companies tend to be faster with less organization, while enterprises tend to move slower with more organization. So when everyone's scrambling due to an outage, you appreciate the organization within an enterprise. But when you're trying to innovate or implement change, you appreciate the flexibility within a smaller company. So it's not that one's necessarily better than the other. But if you've only worked in a smaller company, then you don't really know what it's like to deal with enterprise frameworks. It's not to say that you can't learn. So when Human Resources asks, how large is your company, or if you have any enterprise experience, don't lie, but also don't just say no. Say something like this. I work for a mid-sized company that has a strong culture for process. Our goal is to never let production go down. I think this experience lends itself well within an enterprise. With that response, it's much harder for someone to say, sorry, we're looking for someone with enterprise experience. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. If you want to learn how to get your dream job, watch this video to learn how to crush your next interview. See you next time on Digital Decision Makers.